There is a very real feeling around Golden State right now that the front office cannot afford to walk into this summer with only one dream on the board. Everybody knows the Giannis chatter is the headline grabber, but around the league that is not being treated as a sure thing at all. Milwaukee can shut the door, Giannis can stay loyal, and the Warriors would be left staring at the same clock they have been trying to beat for months. Steph Curry still playing at a level that demands urgency, while the roster around him keeps raising more questions than answers. That is why Donovan Mitchell is starting to feel less like random fan fiction and more like the kind of backup plan serious teams keep in their pocket. The reporting around this is not coming from nowhere. The idea is simple. If Cleveland has another painful playoff ending, and Mitchell gives even the slightest sign that he is not rushing to lock himself into a long extension, the whole situation changes. From that point on, this stops being about whether the Cavaliers love him and starts being about whether they can risk losing control of the timeline. And that is where Golden State becomes dangerous. The Warriors still have something a lot of contenders do not have: young pieces that matter, contracts that can be moved, and a reason to go all in that everyone in basketball understands. This franchise is no longer in a place where patience sells. Nobody in the Bay wants to spend another year watching Curry burn through defenders just to drag the team toward the play-in. If a player like Mitchell becomes available, the pressure to act would hit hard inside that building. Now, let's be honest about the basketball side, because this is where Dub Nation splits in two. A Curry-Mitchell backcourt would be electric offensively, maybe flat-out unfair on some nights, but nobody can ignore the defensive concerns. That is the trade-off. You would be betting that shot creation, pressure on the rim, and late-game scoring punch matter more than size in the backcourt. You would also be trusting Draymond Green and the rest of the rotation to cover a lot of stress on the other end. That is not a small gamble. That is a franchise-defining one. What makes this feel even bigger is that Golden State seems fully aware that the old two-timeline idea is running out of room. If Mitchell really enters the conversation this summer, names like Kuminga, Podziemski, Moody, and future picks are going to come up fast. And once that starts, the temperature around this team will rise overnight. Right, Curry deserves another run if you believe the Warriors should push the chips in one more time, because this may be one of those moments where the next move tells us exactly what this franchise thinks the final Curry chapter should look like, and the next update on this story could get a lot louder. Because once you get past the highlight reel appeal, the real conversation gets uncomfortable fast. If the Warriors move for Mitchell, they are not just adding talent, they are choosing a direction. They would be admitting that the future can wait, and that the only timeline that matters is the one still tied to number 30. Around the league, that kind of decision earns respect, but it also brings risk that can follow a franchise for years. If Cleveland reaches that point where doubt starts creeping in behind the scenes, Golden State will not be the only team watching. But few teams can sell a star on immediate relevance the way the Warriors can. Mitchell would walk into a situation where the responsibility is obvious from day one. This would not be about building something slowly. It would be about stepping into meaningful games, heavy expectations, and a locker room that knows exactly what urgency feels like. Curry would still be the face of it all, but Mitchell would be asked to ease that burden in the one area Golden State has lacked too often: reliable scoring pressure when defenses load up late. Too many possessions have ended with Steph trying to create something out of almost nothing. That is not sustainable when the margins get thinner in April and May. At the same time, the cost of this kind of swing would hit fans in a personal way. It is easy to talk trades when it is just names on a screen, but Kuminga's upside, Podziemski's feel, Moody's patience, and the value of future picks are not small things to part with. That is why this debate has so much heat around it. One side sees a final shot at keeping the championship window alive. The other sees a desperate move that could leave the roster thinner, older, and easier to target when it matters most. Both sides have a case, and that is exactly why this is becoming one of the most tense scenarios hanging over the summer. What keeps this story alive is the timing. If Cleveland comes up short again, and the extension picture gets cloudy, there will be no shortage of noise. Front offices talk, agents talk, rival executives read hesitation better than anybody, and once that kind of uncertainty gets into the air, it spreads quickly. Golden State has lived through these moments before. The franchise knows what it looks like when a star starts wondering whether his current current situation has already peaked. That is when bold teams step in, and the Warriors have never built their identity on playing scared when a championship door cracks open. And from the channel side, this is exactly why staying plugged in matters right now, because this is not the kind of off-season story you hear about once and then forget. This is the type of situation that can shift in one playoff exit, one report, one quiet meeting, one leaked hesitation, and suddenly, the whole league is talking about the Bay again. If you follow this team closely and want the real updates as they break, this is the moment to subscribe and stay locked in, because once the summer starts moving, these stories do not wait for anybody. Comment, "The dynasty is not over," if you still believe Golden State has another serious move in it, because there is more to unpack here, and the next piece of this could change the whole mood around the Warriors. If you love following the Warriors and everything around Steph Curry, subscribe now, because we cover every story about this team. There is also another layer to this that people around the league keep circling back to, and it has nothing to do with box scores. It is about pressure inside the building. When a franchise has lived at the top for as long as Golden State did, ordinary seasons start feeling heavier than they should. Losses get louder, flaws get harder to hide, and every front office decision gets judged through the lens of what Curry still has left. That is why a player like Mitchell is not just appealing because of the points he brings. He represents relief. He represents another star defenses have to fear, another voice in big moments, another player capable of taking over a fourth quarter when everything starts tightening up. And if you are looking at this from Mitchell's side, the appeal is easy to understand too. There comes a point for great players when regular season success stops being enough. Winning 50 games feels nice until the playoffs expose the same pressure points all over again. If Cleveland falls into that kind of disappointment one more time, the conversation around Mitchell changes immediately. Then it becomes less about whether the Cavaliers want to keep him and more about whether he sees his best chance to chase something bigger somewhere else. That is where Golden State can sell more than money or market size. It can sell legacy, urgency, and the chance to play next to the one player who still bends the floor in ways nobody else can. Of course, none of this works unless the Warriors are willing to stomach the fallout. Depth would take a hit. The margin for error would shrink. Steve Kerr would have to rethink lineups, matchups, and how to protect that backcourt against bigger teams. Some nights it would look brilliant. Other nights it would look vulnerable in ways fans would hate. But that is what all-in moves look like. They are not clean, they are not safe, and they do not arrive with guarantees. They come with tension attached, and Golden State may be reaching the point where living with tension is better than settling for slow decline. That is why this summer feels like it could define the final stretch of the Curry era more than any other. The Warriors still have enough credibility to get in the room on a star conversation, and they still have enough assets to make teams listen. What matters now is whether they truly believe one more aggressive swing is worth the cost. Around the Bay, that answer may already be forming. Fans have watched this group hover between dangerous and incomplete for too long, and patience does not hit the same when the franchise centerpiece keeps proving he is still worthy of a real push. So keep a close eye on every Cleveland development, every extension whisper, every playoff result that shifts the mood, because this is the kind of story that starts as a possibility and suddenly turns into a real negotiation before most people are ready for it. And if you want to stay ahead of that moment instead of hearing about it after everybody else already has an opinion, this is the time to subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on, because when the first serious update drops, it is going to move fast, and the next report may bring an even bigger name into the Warriors conversation. Right, never count out the Warriors if you believe this front office still has one bold move left in it. Before we continue this story, subscribe to the channel so you stay updated with everything happening with the Warriors. And that is why the next few weeks are going to matter so much more than people think. One playoff stumble, one awkward pause in contract talks, one sign that Cleveland is no longer fully in control, and the Warriors could be right there waiting to turn league-wide tension into a franchise-changing move. For Golden State, this is about more than adding talent. It is about refusing to waste what is left of a rare era while Curry is still giving this team a chance to dream bigger than the play-in. If you want sharp Warriors updates without the usual noise, and you want to stay ahead of the biggest off-season storylines before they explode everywhere, subscribe now and keep this channel close, because what is coming next could completely reshape the future of the Bay.